So my name's Thea Harris. My full name's Theodora Harris. Named after my mom. My mom's Dorothea Harris. Her parents are William Goods and Sandra Morehouse Goods. My father is John Harris. His parents were Gloria Harris and John Harris. I think I'm somebody that is very passionate about my territories. Feel really connected and rooted to these lands, to Coast Salish territory. I really love this island and this territory. My family's business called Ay Lelum, which means the good house, and we are the good family. Our business focuses on Coast Salish couture and fashion. It actually starts way before that. It starts with my grandparents. They had a few businesses before and a few stores actually in Nanaimo. So this is actually a second generation business. My relationship to my family's business is I was kind of right there at the beginning. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been modeling for my family's clothing line. When I was about 15, 16, I actually started working in my grandmother's store, which was Art of the CM. The CM means creator. I was working there from a really young age, and I would say that's probably where my passion for business really started. This business has been many places and done much, but it really started with my grandparents, and they stepped back and my aunts now have stepped in. If you think about how businesses relate to maybe what you might call an employee, and we call them certain things, and we have a description around their title, and that's all okay. You know, that's fine. It's just a little bit different in our family. My understanding from my grandfather is that way back when there was knowledge around how to really even see what somebody's job might be when they were quite young, or even still in the womb, understanding the rules or the guidelines or the laws around what they're going to step into. So they were really trained quite seriously, and I know my grandpa talks about that a lot. He was trained by his grandfather when he was really young. He would kind of take him out and give him the teachings or share what he needed to know to step into who he was going to be. I would call my grandpa many things. You know, I'd call him a master carver and a knowledge keeper, you know, a historian, an elder, hereditary chief, but he's really part of my family. This idea of job title, like I said, I kind of laugh at because I'm like, I don't know. I'm a part of my family. My grandparents, in doing the work that they did, they really almost like set the table, and everyone has a spot at that table. You can come or you can leave or you can do whatever you want. I have like immeasurable gratitude towards my family and my grandparents for setting that table so that I could come, even as a young one and not having remembered doing it, I could come and be at the table. As I've grown into being in business and doing my master's in business, how I've kind of sat at that table has maybe evolved as well. One moment for me where I kind of felt an overwhelming feeling of accomplishment, I think it was at Vancouver Fashion Week. I don't know if you've ever maybe seen like a behind the scenes on a fashion show or anything like that, but it's chaos. It's totally chaotic. There's people everywhere and clothes are flying around. You're going fast. You get people lined up. I mean, even getting there, getting on the ferry and packing everyone up, and my grandparents, and it's totally crazy. You know, you get really in it. You get hyper focused. I hadn't seen a show before. I stepped out kind of into the wings, and I was watching months of like just an immeasurable amount of work from so many members of my family. My uncle who does the artwork, and my grandfather who does the artwork, and my grandma who does garment design, and my aunts who do garment design. And I remember just sitting there in the wings and watching like the first model. I was just overcome, like I was overwhelmed. This is what Indigenous business is. It's my family, and it's this hard work, and it's this chaos, but this like beautiful chaos. Everything coming together to kind of create art and history and story and language and music. It's indescribable, the feeling. I'm welling up thinking about it, and see the appreciation from the crowd as they witness my family's art and culture and language come to life. It was a really beautiful moment, and a moment I'll certainly always treasure. They've done their job, the art and the culture and the music and the stories and the language alive through fashion. I don't know if you ever heard this term, but there's something called silent speakers. It's people who understand their language but that don't speak it. And they may not speak it for a number of reasons. A common reason people may not speak their Indigenous language is because of the impacts of residential school. There's a block there, there's a feeling of silence. If we can move those blocks to bring out the language, that's a really beautiful thing. And I feel like in some ways this business has done that. I think we're all carriers of maybe in some way the language, of the art, of the history, of the culture, the heritage, all of the music that we have. It's my grandpa's songs, and it's my aunt's songs, songs that they're making and recording. I remember one of my favorite quotes, I think, from Dr. Leroy Littlebear. He talks about language as a vessel, as a holder of things that contains knowings, knowledge, history. It has so much in it. It carries so much. When we speak the language, it brings all of those things forward, all of that knowledge and history. I see this business as kind of the same a little bit, as kind of a vehicle that allows us to bring forward all of these incredible things. I feel fortunate to be a part of that and just kind of be doing my part in that. Being an Indigenous person, having come through what we've come through, I would call all Indigenous people resilient, to be here and to be doing what they're doing. I might include myself in that. Maybe hard to say, in Coast Salish culture, certainly, I think in my territories, we don't talk about ourselves like that. I'm a weaver. I do Coast Salish weaving, but I don't know that I would maybe call myself that, and I didn't call myself that for a really long time. But I remember my grandpa, I think more than once, stood me up and said, "You're a weaver, this is my granddaughter." He calls me Trish Dory, and says she's a weaver. I think from that moment, I knew that I was a weaver. It's hard for me to say I'm resilient. Perhaps I am, but I think I'll know it for sure if my grandma or my grandpa ever stand me up and say, "That's what you are." We recently had a pretty devastating fire that took out kind of our whole warehouse.
A stack of men's jackets.
That's really jarring, for a business owner to kind of see all their stock just go. There was a lot of questions happening. What's going to happen and what are we going to do? And they had to go to New York. They had to go to New York shortly after, like a week after. And it was fortunate to kind of prepare to go to New York. There was a lot of pre-work that happened, and part of that pre-work was sending all of the garments in advance. So they all happened to not be there when the fire happened. And again, that's where they store everything, the couture gowns, everything, and everything was lost. They just hit the ground running, getting more things in production. My one aunt is always, kind of saying, you just keep going. And, things happen, but you just keep going because we have jobs to do and big jobs. We don't let setbacks or things that try to set us back, we don't let them succeed. We keep going. I want my culture to be part of everything that I do, and from the clothes that I wear to the way that I kind of hold myself and the way I relate to people, the way I present myself in communities, or even in the classroom, the ways that I kind of go in the classroom and hold myself. I hope that culture is always a piece of that, always. So Theadora Fraser, who is an incredible leader and entrepreneur. She's a pilot and has, I think, the first female Indigenous owned, airline in Canada. She said, "I believe helping to create conditions for Indigenous women entrepreneurs to thrive is the single most natural, fast, and effective pathway to economic reconciliation in our country." I've seen what Indigenous women entrepreneurs have done and what they can do, and man, they're movers and shakers. They're really incredible people. So I couldn't agree more with that sentiment, that I think that's the work at this time, is to create those conditions for those people to thrive and to take off and to grow. We're certainly in an interesting time where there seems to be more discussion about Indigenous business. I believe it was Ovid Mekri who said there can be no reconciliation without economic reconciliation. Theadora Fraser was saying means creating those conditions for entrepreneurs to thrive. We can realize the future of economic reconciliation. See it witnessed in my family is a real privilege. There's a ways to go, I'm excited. I'm excited about that path and that journey and being on it with my family and with all of these other Indigenous business people. Something I actually really appreciate about Indigenous business is that there's time and space to let things unfold as they need to or as they should. I don't know if you've ever been to the museum, but they used to have an exhibit called Our Living Languages. And I love that. I love to think of our languages as living, as our culture as living, and, living through it with, my family's business, through the art and the fashion and the culture and the songs. I love the music so much, and to hear my grandpa. And the cool thing about the music, for the kind of Spindle World collection, we took some of my wool. We're like leaning back and we're pulling it, and then my aunt is like playing it like a bass, and then Rob the Viking like mixed it up. I've heard my aunt say before, she was in a show at the Port Theater and she said, we don't decolonize, we indigenize. And she said, we're gonna indigenize the world. I saw something the other day that I really appreciated, talking about kind of equality and then equity and justice. Equality, kind of giving the same things to two different types of people or two different groups of people. Equity, acknowledging that two different groups of people might have two different needs, so kind of giving them tools based on the needs to bring them into the same position or give them the same opportunities. Justice as being a correction to the system that creates the inequity or the inequality. And so correcting the whole system so that everyone has tools to access the same opportunities. What does that look like in terms of Indigenous business, and how do businesses go about that for Indigenous people? What does equality look like? What does equity look like? And what does justice look like? It might look something like hiring Indigenous people, or I feel like there's people now that are talking about things like land back. How can businesses or individuals contribute to land back? What does that look like? I think that's a really exciting discussion. That is affirmative action. There's different laws based on the territories that you're on. There's kind of legal plurality, or beyond territories, just even within our own community. So it means that we just walk and we operate in a very mindful way. If I'm ever in doubt, I ask my grandparents and I say, can I say this, or can I operate like this? Maybe ask for their permission, their thoughts or ideas. So as an example of that, I called my aunt on my way here and I said, what can I say? Or what should I say? How do I relate to this interview? It's a part of the way we work, I guess, is we very mindful of what kind of laws or principles are governing me in this situation or at this time. We also want to be in good and right relationships with our future generation. And what does that mean? It means creating a world in which they can thrive. It means creating cultural perpetuity. A culture that lives forever, so that they have access to the culture and they have access to the waters and the land, and they can do all of those things. And I certainly see that in our family business as they build something where the young ones can come in. And we talked about how my aunts are the second generation. I'm the third generation, and then my nieces and nephews are the fourth generation. And so when they do make decisions, they consider those younger generations and what they're building and how it will impact them. They've incorporated this into their ways of doing business, using sustainable material, recycled fabrics, producing their garments here in Canada. So always considering what will have the least impact. I certainly see it as like a core business value for a lot of Indigenous businesses, and have as little impact, or if we do have an impact, have it be a positive one. I certainly see that in my family's business. It's life, and it's our lives, bringing back all these things and working hard. It's all of those things. So for me, the family business has really shifted my perspective on Indigenous business, on what that means. Living through your values, living authentically as an Indigenous person, living out your laws and your principles and ways of relating, and doing all of that through the medium of business. And so witnessing my aunts do that has been really incredible. I feel really privileged to witness as they do all of those things, as Indigenous businesswomen. So, yeah.